It's very rare that I am ever in just like a bad mood where I'm just like I get aggravated, obviously, and frustrated, but I am just in a bad mood today. And I almost didn't show up for this. I was just going to take a mental health day and not do this live, but then I remember how I feel afterwards. And I know a lot of people use this for workouts, which never worked on me. I feel equally as terrible after a workout as before. But meditation and just connecting with people is a little bit different. Today, again, less of a meditation, but a conscious discussion that I would love to have with you. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Rebekah Borucki. Hello, Zarlene. I am a mother of 5 children, ages 22, 20, 16, almost 17, 9, just turned 9, and 5.5. So I'm tired. So I'm a mother of 5 children. Oh, and today I get to watch my college senior present her honors thesis via Zoom. So that's exciting. The whole family's gonna watch. And then she's gonna graduate, hopefully. She's gonna graduate. And I am a meditation guide, and I am the author of books for big and little readers. And right now I have an incredibly important campaign going on. We are at the halfway point, and we are more than halfway to our goal of getting 100 classrooms filled with free books for every student. I am begging you at this point, begging you to support with anything that you have. Every single dollar counts. It goes very, very far. This is a direct giving campaign. So when you support a classroom, all the money goes directly to getting books and mental health resources and tools for that classroom. I present the books in person via Zoom, or if it's in my local area, anywhere from Virginia all the way up to New York, I go myself. I have plans to go into West Virginia in the fall. I'm very excited to a reservation. So there's lots of good stuff going on. I hope you can support. And remember, sharing and talking about it is currency too. So if you don't have the financial means to support the campaign, please just share it. Tag your friends, tag your family. Tag your followers. Do it for me. Cheryl says hers are 23, 17, and 8. Oh, so you have what I have. You have that. I was just about to be done, and let me start all over again with this foolishness. Anyway, the point of today's conversation is something that came up. I'm sorry, I don't have the names right now, but I promise to put them in the video description because crediting is so important. But my dear friend Elizabeth D'Alto, who is the founder of Wild Soul Movement, and I encourage you to follow her. She learned something very recently, and she shared it on her platform, and it was mind-blowing because it put a name to something that I have been practicing and trying to teach my children for a long time. And sorry, that was the 22-year-old calling me. She knows I have a live in 11:11, but she's calling me anyway. But I want to know where you stand on it and what you think about it. It's this theory or this idea that there are 2 types of people: askers and guessers. And an asker, okay, so I'll explain. So an asker is someone who asks a question, feels free to ask for whatever they need, or like including information or favors, and then they expect to hear either a yes or a no and be good with it. A guesser is someone who doesn't feel comfortable asking a question unless they are going to be guaranteed a yes. Now, if I'm getting this wrong, feel free to correct me, but this is how I interpreted it, and this is how it was very helpful to me. So I've always considered myself an asker. So not only do I ask a lot of questions and I ask for help, always though, this is the caveat. I always do consider if the person's going to feel put upon when I ask that question. So I do cater, or I do adjust my request to that. And sometimes I just don't ask at all to that person. But I'm also a person who you can ask me anything. You can ask me for anything. And then I reserve the right to say yes or no. Oftentimes when I get interviewed for podcasts, people know that I have different parts of my past that are more sensitive than others, or different parts of my story. And they ask me, is it okay if we talk about this, this, and this? And I say, look, I don't even want to go through all that. You just ask me whatever you want. And then I'm just going to tell you if I want to talk about it or not. And it doesn't have to be awkward. Like, it'll be totally cool. Because it can change with the day, what I feel like talking about and what I don't, or with the moment. We'll see how it goes. And I've always considered myself to be an asker. I try to get my children to be askers, like ask the question, but expect a yes or no answer. Don't throw a temper tantrum if it's a no, because that often happens. They're like, they start begging and asking. And I'm look, you ask the question and you need to expect that it can go one way or the other. And if you are not prepared for both answers, then don't ask the question. But then there's the guesser, and this was the story that she told along with it, that this gentleman was really put off because his sister-in-law kept asking to stay with them, and he had to keep coming up with these excuses for why she couldn't, and then he had run out of excuses, so he didn't know what to do. And I'm just like, just tell her she can't stay with you. But people were saying in the comments or in response that it was rude for her to even ask. But see, that doesn't occur to an asker. An asker feels like, I can ask whatever because I have the expectation that the person is going to be honest and forthright and just tell me yes or no. And first of all, I want to know if you are an asker or a guesser, and like, no judgment, right? No judgment. People are guessers for lots of reasons, because they're conditioned that way, because they're trying to protect their feelings. They might be very sensitive to rejection. So are you an asker or a guesser? How were you raised? What was your household like? Were your parents askers or guessers? My mother was an asker. I think that she was an asker. And I'll say this, I think that there was a transition that was really incredible for me to witness around the time I was in middle school, where she went from being a guesser to being an asker. She went from being someone who I would consider to be a pushover, and this isn't every guesser, but she was a pushover, to someone who learned to set very strong boundaries and then go after what she wanted. So that was a really interesting and I think important and educational experience for me to see my mother transition to that. But then she went like a little bit, like she swung all the way to like, I'm not doing anything for anybody. I want to do what I want. And that's a whole different thing than asking and guessing, but it was just really interesting to see. Vimbai says, I'm an asker, but I find it hard to receive no's. Okay, so then you might be a guesser. You might be someone who, when you're asking, you are preparing yourself to receive the yes. Like you're hinged on, or you're attached to this yes. Now, the other part of this, which was most interesting for me, and why it helped me so much, is because I believe that if you become an asker, train yourself to be an asker, you become someone who's really, really good at receiving feedback or constructive criticism. And I know that I thrive on it. So I always tell people, like, here's this thing I want you to read, or this is this thing I want you to look at, or this idea that I'm trying to propose. I want you to tell me honestly what you feel. Like, don't sugarcoat it. Don't bullshit me. Like, tell me exactly what you feel. Oh, great. Now I have to label this as having a curse word when I put it on YouTube because I said bullshit. Messing with my advertising dollars. Whatever. No one's watching this video anyway, so because it's just me talking. So I really, really, really want that honest feedback, because I feel like that's how I actually grow and evolve. So when I'm asking for advice, I expect all answers, and I really, really want it. Now, where that gets me into trouble is because when people ask me for advice or critique, I'm super honest and direct, to the point where, like, I remove all feeling from it. It's just, pure objectivity in terms of all of this information that I'm giving you is neutral and, meant to be helpful. And it's my honest opinion. So it's subjective, but it's being delivered objectively. And then people get swole. They get upset with me. So Cheryl says, I'm an asker most of the time. I can be a guesser with people that I'm really unsure about. Leads to too much anxiety, though. Getting much better at being an asker. Yes, getting much better at being an asker. So I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but you have to think about how it works for you. And I think it's really important as a human being that relates to other human beings, that you understand who is an asker and who is a guesser. So when someone asks you for feedback, it's, you say, like, if you're an asker, you say, like, do you really want to know? Because I do prepare my people, especially as a coach. I tell people before they work with me, this isn't going to be a right fit if you cannot take really, really direct feedback, like super direct. Like I deliver it without any emotion. I love you, but I'm just going to tell you what I think that's going to make you, that I feel is going to help you to succeed. So you have to be aware of your audience, and you have to be sensitive and compassionate to that, because the most important thing is that communication is flowing and that what you're saying is being received and vice versa. So you need to also, when you're talking to people and sharing ideas and feedback and making requests and waiting for your yes or no, that you are very aware of how everyone operates. Otherwise, the communication breaks down and nothing gets accomplished. Hey, Lana! What you doing? Girl, where are you now in the world? It's my friend Lana. She's like a jet setter. I am never, ever, you're not an asker, and you're such a brilliant businesswoman. I don't understand how you're not an asker. How do you get anything done? But I'll tell you that it's a lot of freedom being an asker. Again, one's not better than the other, but being an asker is better for me, because I know that I am going to get the information I need to be better. And then also, I'm not going to be setting myself up for like hurt feelings, this expression, catching feelings. I'm a very sensitive person, but when I ask for something, I want an honesty in return, because I think that makes for richness of relationship. You're in Holland in lockdown. Well, what a nice, beautiful place to be in lockdown. Oh gosh, it's so weird how like all over the world, it's in our lifetime, we haven't had this experience where almost everybody in every country is kind of experiencing this same, having to be inside and having to, restrict our movement and protect ourselves from this, this one singular thing. So it's really interesting. We're definitely not all having the same experiences, but it's really interesting how much we are sharing with people from other countries. But you're in Holland. Carol says, I tend to be tell assertive and not ask assertive. Interesting. I love that. Yet when people offer direct feedback out of the blue, I try my best to keep an open mind and not let it hurt my feelings. Let me tell you something about unsolicited feedback. That for me is a no-go, because I think that you need consent even for feedback. So when you're asking someone something, you're giving consent for them to give you information back. But when people give the unsolicited feedback, I'm like, no. And it's not because I'm catching feelings about it, which is totally fine if you do. It's just because I didn't ask you. And that really gets my goat, especially when I'm like putting out surveys to people and I say, I have this question, and then they ask or they answer with something that had nothing to do with the question. That irritates me. It's unhelpful, and it really centers their concerns. And I actually did it to someone yesterday. Elizabeth D'Alto, who I'm talking about right now, and her post, she was asking about what a word meant to her. She asked about the word queen and said, what do you think of, or who do you think of when you hear the word queen? And I gave an answer that was unrelated to that question. And I later apologized. I said, I'm sorry to derail the conversation. And she was like, no, it was welcome feedback, and it was interesting, but it could have just as easily been offensive, because I went into her space and I centered my feelings where they didn't need to be. It wasn't about that. When she asks about that thing, then I'll talk about it. Okay, I'm going to do one more comment, and then I'm going to get going because I'm just rambling. Darlene says, I understand using asker as a definition, but I'm not sure how guesser defines as being someone who expects yes, or I'm missing the point. So I don't know why it's labeled guesser either. I actually don't either. So we should call it an expector. But yeah, so it's just what it was called. This person coined it as that. And I could be explaining it wrong, but this is how I received the message, and it was really helpful for me. And I will link the original post so that you can go and read it yourself. But again, a guesser is just someone who, I guess a guesser is kind of like an assumer. Like they're guessing what the answer might be. Like unless they can guess what the answer might be, then they're not going to ask the question. And maybe that's it. So you can guess in the affirmative or guess in the negative, but you're not going to ask it unless you have a very specific expectation of what you are going to receive in return. Does that make more sense? I think like that's what it might mean. But again, who knows? So Carol says, interesting perspective. Thanks a lot. Thank you for joining me. So again, sometimes meditation is we sit in quiet and I give you some affirmations and we breathe and we get chill. And other times I just pose a question to you and I want you to think about it and come back and answer thoughtfully. It's really helpful in community to be able to share ideas and feedback honestly, right? So I'm asking for your real ideas and your real opinions and your real experiences, because I love to hear them, and it helps me to have a better understanding of my community, but also just like human beings, because who doesn't want to know more about human beings? You know, we need to learn as much as we can to make the world a better place, and also before the aliens come, because I heard they're hanging out right now. So anyway, I love you. I have a hair clip on my finger. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I thank you for showing up. It is so important for me to be here in community with you, and for that reason I'm so appreciative of you showing up for me and for yourself every day, because it inspires and compels me to show up for you and myself. I was in a super bad mood when I started, and I'm feeling pretty good. I'm gonna be in a super bad mood again because I gotta go back on social media and then help my littlest one distance learn. Y'all, please send help. She had to write 4 sentences today, which is so ironic because the other day there was this meme that was like, please send prayers. My 9-year-old has to write 4 sentences, and it was really funny. So today, Annie, who's 5.5, had to write 4 sentences about what makes a seed grow. And it nearly killed both of us. It really did. It was like, seeds need air to grow, seeds need water to grow, seeds need dirt to grow, seeds need water to grow, and that almost sent us flying over the edge like Thelma and Louise. But not like Thelma and Louise, because we weren't holding hands and we weren't happy with each other. So, I love you. I'll see you soon. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. Thank goodness. I'm falling apart.